With her new TV show on becoming a god in Central Florida out now on Showtime, it's safe to say Kirsten Dunst has had one hell of a career. She belongs to a small group of talented actors and actresses that have grown up on screen throughout the years, giving iconic performances while doing so. And when I say grown up on screen, I mean literally. In the interview with the vampire, she matures psychologically while retaining her young appearance. During Outer Limits in the episode Music of the Spheres, we see her with her first on-screen boyfriend as a young teenager, which resulted in Marblehead, which was odd. This, however, turned into her giving birth as a young teenager in 15 and Pregnant before entering high school in classics like Get Over It, Bring It On, and Drop Dead Gorgeous. This, of course, would lead her to graduation, following her dream of becoming an actress and ultimately banging Spider-Man. That's one hell of an on-screen life. But with any life, like most of you out there may have had experiences with, come coincidences. And when it comes to Kirsten Dunst on film, there is a very specific coincidence called Peter. Originally, this video was just going to be a rundown of every time Dunst had yelled the name Peter throughout her career because, well, it annoyed me and I thought it would be funny, but as it turns out, sitting down to watch everything Dunst had ever been in, a creepy theme began to emerge. And that was that whether she explicitly said the name Peter or not, characters named Peter have had a direct effect on her character and that film's narrative in a bizarrely surprising amount of her movies. Also, because I'm nuts, I compiled a ton of random connections throughout her films that could be linked back to the name Peter. It's an absolute web. So grab a drink, get your smoke on. I'm Tom from Screen On Point, and this is exactly how many times has Kirsten Dunst said Peter in movies. So before we start, this is how we're going to count Peters. For every literal Peter shouted out by Dunst, it'll get a point like this, and for every connection or link to the name Peter, it'll also get a point. Isn't counting fun?
That means you can start.
Great, so at the time of this recording, Kirsten Dunst has portrayed exactly 72 characters in film and television over her 30-year career. But her very first on-screen film role was the daughter of Sherman McCoy, played by Tom Hanks, in the 1999 film The Bonfire of the Vanities. Interestingly, the co-lead alongside Hanks was played by Bruce Willis, and his character's name, Peter Fallow. Though Dunst's character Campbell has no interactions with Peter, it is Peter who ultimately ends up saving her father from serious jail time when he supplies McCoy's legal team with a tape that proves his innocence to a hit and run. From Fallow to Furrows, Dunst's next movie would be the low-budget film High Strung in 1992, playing the daughter of lead character Thane Furrows, played by Steve Odekirk, who would later write The Nutty Professor, the lead character's name in that being Sherman, also starring in this movie a young Jim Carrey. But what does this have to do with anything regarding the name Peter? Nothing other than the fact that isn't it weird that the surnames of characters Peter Fallow and Thane Furrows mean almost exactly the same thing? Fallow and Furrow both can be referred to as ploughed land. But from soil to stars, Dunst's first big speaking role on television was in the iconic television series Star Trek, where she appeared as Hendril in the 1993 season 7 episode Dark Page, opposite Brent Spiner, who plays Data, an actor that will come into play later on in Dunst's career. But for now, and granted, this one is a stretch right now, but stay with me because it too plays an interesting part later on in this video. But any serious Trekkie will tell you that there is one prominent character named Peter in the entire 726 episodes of the Star Trek catalogue, and that was the nephew of James T. Kirk, Peter Kirk. Peter Kirk was played by Craig Huxley, credited as Craig Hunley, who is from Sherman Oaks, California. 1 year later, 20 minutes away from Sherman Oaks, the film Greedy began filming seeing Dunst play yet another daughter, but it was her next film, Interview with the Vampire, the same year that catapulted her into Hollywood stardom. The role as Claudia saw her act opposite Tom Cruise, who played Lester, a role that Peter Weller was once considered for, and Weller appeared in Star Trek Into Darkness, so keep that in mind for later. Of course, alongside Cruise in this film, Brad Pitt played Louis, and whilst filming in London, stayed in a house that once belonged to Peter Cushing. That's some trivia for you, bro. The success of this film, along with her next movie Little Women, led her to the highly popular 1995 film Jumanji, opposite Robin Williams, the name of her on-screen brother, Peter. Let's count them up.
Peter.
Exactly 10 Peters there and only 11 roles in. Also, as a side note for later, whenever I think of Robin Williams' best roles, I can't help but think of Hook, where he played Peter Pan.
Oh, there you are, Peter.
opposite Dustin Hoffman, but we'll get to that in a bit. Instead, how about we relax for a bit with 3 Nazi projects back to back. At least one of those was narrated by Keanu Reeves. The others, The Siege at Ruby Ridge, starring Randy Quaid in 1996. Her on-screen brother Sammy is played by Bradley Pierce, who played Dunst's on-screen brother Peter in Jumanji, and Mother Night in the same year, starring Nick Nolte, who played Peter in I Love Trouble opposite Julia Roberts, who Dunst would later go on to co-star with in Mona Lisa Smile. From there, Dunst would play several different television characters throughout 1996, including Marblehead in The Outer Limits and a homeless heroin addict in ER opposite Batman, and Eric LaSalle in his quintessential role as Peter Benton for the entirety of the show's run from 1994 to 2009, and appeared in each episode that Dunst starred in. Dunst would return to film the following year in films Wag the Dog opposite Dustin Hoffman, Hook, Peter, Jumanji, Peter, and True Heart opposite Zachary Ty Bryan, an actor who too had starred in both Outer Limits and ER, but is probably more notably remembered getting wrecked by a demon in the final season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He played a character called Peter Nichols. 1998 seems like the perfect time for womanhood, right? You can bet your baby it is, as Dunst would tackle the role of being 15 and pregnant. It must be a hard thing for her on-screen father, played by David Andrews, to handle, right? No, not really, especially as he's already played Apollo 12 Commander Pete Conrad in Apollo 13 with Dunst's other dad, Sherman. If you can get to the moon, you can handle teen pregnancy. That's what I always say. Also, he's good mates with Ryan Gosling. But from Moon to Platoon, Small Soldiers was up next for Dunst, where she, along with Alan, not that Alan, her dad's lawyer, and the Gorgonites would battle Tommy Lee Jones along with an army of Sarah Michelle Gellar's, or shall I say Buffy's. Also, fun fact, Tommy Lee Jones, he's had the most outstanding acting career, hasn't he? Dating all the way back to 1970, but did you know he's also directed too? In fact, the first film he directed that went to cinema was the 2005 film 3 Burials. Interestingly, he starred in it too. His character? Yep, Pete Perkins. It's safe to say up until this point, I've just utterly played Kirsten Dunst's career with random connections to Peters of the world, which, if I were her, would be pretty unbearable, which controversially brings us to her 1999 film The Virgin Suicides, directed by Sofia Coppola, which brings Peter back into the narrative of her films. Dunst, who plays Lux Lisbon in the film, has her first dialogue sequence with a character named Peter, who is the first of the boys to step foot in the Lisbon household. This sequence is the first demonstration of Lux's nascent sexuality, setting the wheels in motion for her future exploits. This film is immediately followed with Drop Dead Gorgeous the same year, with an all-star cast of Kirstie Allen, Alison Janney, Amy Adams, Denise Richards, and Brittany Murphy, with Dunst in the lead. During the film, as Dunst's character Amber is instructed that she will be unable to continue in the beauty pageant due to her unauthorized outfit, Lisa, another contestant, drops out in order for Amber to use her costume and continue in the competition. The rationalization that causes Lisa to do this for Amber is that she believes there's only one room for one performer in her family, and that's her brother Peter.
And let's be honest, the family only needs one Liza, and Peter's got much better legs than me.
In the original script, Lisa also encourages Amber to go out and win the pageant for Peter too. The film ultimately ends years later in the narrative, with Amber sat presenting the news as a co-anchor with a character named Peter Aitchison. Moving into the 2000s, Dunst would appear in The Crow 3 Salvation, a bizarre career move at that point considering the exceptional film she had already been a part of, but one would assume she was just blackmailed or something like that. However, somehow, some way she appeared as one of the leads opposite Eric Mabius. Throughout the film, Alex Corvus, who's resurrected by the Crow, has two allies, Dunst's character Erin and Alex's attorney Peter Walsh. Along with The Crow Salvation that year, Dunst also appeared in the super popular movie Bring It On alongside Eliza Dushku, probably most known for playing Faith in Buffy, and Claire Kramer, who played Glory in Buffy. This film was sadly sandwiched with another weird movie choice, Deeply. But what did I find in Deeply?
Oh, Pete.
Yup, pesky Pete. That's a standalone half point. Immediately following Deeply, Dunst was back to the good stuff, starring alongside Ben Foster in Get Over It in 2001. Foster, who plays Burke, ends up getting promoted to the lead in the school play opposite love interest Kelly, played by Dunst. The reason for this, former lead Peter Wong gets injured falling from the rafters of the theatre, setting the film in motion for the eventual ending. Also, Dunst's on-screen brother in this movie is Colin Hanks, son of Tom Hanks, smart to keep it in the family. During the same year, Dunst also appeared in The Cat's Meow, the semi-true story of the Hollywood murder that occurred on a yacht in 1924. This film was directed by Peter Bogdanovich, but it was 2002 through to 2007 that we really saw Peter enter Dunst's life in an amazing way. See what I did there? Spider-Man, I'm talking about Spider-Man. Throughout the 3-film Sam Raimi series, out of the lines that Mary Jane was given, you better believe there were some serious Peters being yelled, so let's count them up.
Peters, Peter, 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 Peter. They're gonna kill us both.
What a morbid end to the 22 Peter Parker shoutout saga. But alas, we must move on to something more cheery, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in 2004, starring Jim Carrey, who is loved all over the world as Ace Ventura, the second film in that franchise being written and directed by Steve Odekirk, Plowed Land. Just before Eternal Sunshine in 2003, however, as previously mentioned, Dunst also starred in Mona Lisa Smile opposite Julia Roberts and Julia Stiles, who ends up getting all loved up with Topher Grace, who hates Peter.
I want you to kill Peter Parker.
Immediately following Spider-Man 2, Dunst then moved on to another Marvel hero when she played Lizzie Bradbury, a tennis superstar who falls in love with Vision's character Peter Colt in the film Wimbledon. Let's count them up.
Peter, Peter, Peter,
Peter, Peter,
Peter, Peter, Peter, Peter, Peter, Peter.
13 Peters in one movie. It looks like Mary Jane might be into someone else there, Spider-Man, and by someone else I actually mean Legolas, as Dunst next starred in Cameron Crowe's Elizabethtown opposite Orlando Bloom. Interestingly, the film Cameron Crowe made prior to this was Vanilla Sky, starring Lestat from Interview with the Vampire, and his assistant in Vanilla Sky, Leonard from The Big Bang Theory, was called Peter Brown. And interestingly, Leonard once starred in a film called Playing Mona Lisa opposite Harvey Fierstein, who played Robin Williams' brother Frank in Mrs. Doubtfire 2 years prior to Jumanji. Isn't Hollywood small? Well, in 2006, Dunst once again partnered up with the Virgin Suicides director Sofia Coppola for the film Marie Antoinette, where she played the lead. Amongst the all-star cast of Rose Byrne, Steve Coogan, Jason Schwartzman and Rip Thorne, a young Tom Hardy also appeared, who given the chance probably hates Peter Parker too. Also interestingly, Hardy's first lead role was as Shinzon in the 10th Star Trek film Nemesis as a clone of lead character Captain Picard. Now this, as mentioned earlier, is where Brent Spiner comes into play. Star Trek Nemesis ultimately ended with Brent Spiner's character Data playing a pivotal part in the film in a really character-defining moment. But outside of Star Trek, however, Spiner isn't really known for a ton of other roles. His other prominent movie role came as Dr. Brackish Oaken in the 1996 movie Independence Day, which stars Jeff Goldblum, whose character David works for Marty Gilbert, played by Harvey Fierstein. Isn't it really small? Following this, and at the end of Spider-Man 3, Dunst starred alongside Simon Pegg in How to Lose Friends and Alienate People in 2008. This film was written by Peter Strahan. And having only just talked about Star Trek, it makes sense to mention that Pegg played Scotty in the new Star Trek franchise, a character in the original series whose nephew, Peter Preston, perished in a pivotal part in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. In Star Trek Into Darkness in 2013, the second film in the new franchise, the film also centered around Khan, and Pegg as Scotty had a direct impact on the narrative, resulting in the catalyst to Khan's demise, so way to avenge nephew Peter. Also, who else starred in Star Trek Into Darkness? That's right, you remembered Peter Weller. Also, a fun fact here, Craig Huxley, or Peter Kirk, invented an instrument that was used on both Star Trek The Wrath of Khan and Star Trek Nemesis. His first composer credit to The Amazing Spider-Man in 1977 as Greg Hundley. In between some bizarre art films, the next cinema movie Dunst would undertake would be in the 2010 drama All Good Things alongside Ryan Gosling, and Gosling's latest film to date, First Man, where he played Neil Armstrong. So careful how you treat her Gosling. Her dad, Pete Conrad, might have a few words for you. If you can get to the moon, you can handle teen pregnancy. That's what I always say. A collaboration with Lars von Trier was up next for Dunst in the 2011 film Melancholia, a film that sees her cheat on her husband to be with Tim, played by Brady Corbett, an actor known for the unsettling film Funny Games, where his character Peter and friend Paul torment a young family. But he's probably most known for his role on the 5th season of 24 alongside Melancholia co-star Kiefer Sutherland as Derek Huxley. I wonder if he's related to Peter Kirk. 2012 saw Dunst take on various roles as the lead in The Bachelorette, her love interest there, James Marsden, his most iconic movie role, probably Cyclops in X-Men, right? But I don't know about you, whenever I think of X-Men, I think of Professor Xavier. On the Road, she co-stars alongside Aragon, whose middle name is Peter, and Upside Down alongside Timothy Spall, who, if you're a Harry Potter fan, might know better as Peter Pettigrew. But remember that scene with Lester and Leonard in Vanilla Sky? Well, that scene, they're talking about Timothy Spall. These films led her to the 2014 film The Two Faces of January, alongside Aragon once more and Oscar Isaac, who more recently entered the Marvel world. Of course, James Marsden is looking a little different here. Aragon wasn't too happy about that. But from Oscar Isaac to Inside Llewyn Davis to the Coen brothers to Fargo, Dunst's next big role would be as beautician Peggy Blomqvist in the second series of Fargo, opposite her on and off-screen husband Jesse Plemons, where she runs down Kieran Culkin's character Rye. The role was obviously so traumatic for Culkin that he took the part of Peter in Long Live the Royals immediately following it. But it was back to the big screen for Dunst after Fargo, starring alongside Michael Shannon and Joel Edgerton in Midnight Special, two men that both played a Peter in Open Window and Bug back in 2006, a time when Dunst was yelling the name Peter every other line. Maybe she was calling then. Up next, Hidden Figures alongside Sheldon, who's obviously mates with Leonard. And then The Beguiled back with Sophia Coppola and Nicole Kidman, who was once married to Lester. And finally, Woodstock alongside Joe Cole, who starred in Green Room with Picard, which seems like the perfect way to reach the crescendo of this video. Black Mirror Season 4 Episode 1 USS Callister, starring Dunst's husband Jesse Plemons, featured a simulation of a Star Trek-like space game called Starfleet. It's a direct parody of the original series of Star Trek, where Plemons plays Robert Daly, who when aboard the simulation acts in a mirrored manner to James T. Kirk, played by William Shatner. And Dunst makes a brief cameo in this episode, but after this deep dive on her career, it makes sense that her real-life husband, who would play a parody of Kirk, which of course leads to Kirk's nephew Peter, played by Craig Huxley, from Sherman Oaks to Sherman McCoy to Peter Fallow, and round and round and round we go. Ultimately, Dunst's total Peters throughout her career holds at a solid 44, and I'm sure as her career goes on, somehow, some way, I'll be able to link it back to fictional Peters across film and television history. Thanks for watching that video. Please do like and subscribe. We upload 2 tasty and tenderized videos a week to sink your teeth into, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to follow us at Screen On Point and Tom A. Ransom on Twitter to satisfy my narcissistic need for acceptance and love, and you make sure you have a wonderful day.